All right, man. Been a busy week, man. Anyway, welcome to the video. Uh, gonna be my first official episode of Infinity's Limit Hot Take, where I'm basically gonna talk about some of the big new releases and things that happened this week. And man, it's been kind of crazy. Yeah, we had a couple trailers drop out of the blue, pretty much. That is the Indiana Jones trailer, and the second now, Super Mario trailer. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about Avatar 2. So I think I'm gonna kind of go in that order. I'll talk about Avatar 2 first because that's actually coming out pretty soon. And then we'll go into Indiana Jones, and then we'll talk about Mario a bit. So, Avatar 2. Man. You know, I was really excited for this movie. And then all of a sudden, like, it's weird. Like, the more trailers came out and the more I started to see of the movie, I kind of started to lose a little bit of interest. And I'm not quite sure why, but I think it has to do with the fact that maybe James Cameron waited a little bit too long on this one. But it's kind of a weird situation because we have to keep in mind that James Cameron really is one of those directors that he doesn't really come around very often. But when he does, he usually brings with him some sort of new technology or advancements in film, because he's a very sort of like, he doesn't make movies the way most people make movies. Like, he's one of those guys that, like, he himself is a movie guy. So he understands like the technicalities of what it takes to make an entertaining movie. Because this guy's like background in history, and if you look at like what he's done in the past, man, like the guy's responsible for some of the best sci-fi action movies like ever made. Like, his resume is absolutely crazy. And it's cool because like he's actually one of those dudes that came out of like almost nothing. Like, the guy used to be a truck driver. And you know, like, he was doing like stuff on the side, and he kind of learned how to become a filmmaker through books and all this. Like, he did things very old school, and he's also a pretty good artist. You know, he did a lot of matte paintings for different films and such stuff like that. So I think it's, you know, as an artist myself, kind of like, you know, I have sympathy for people who are kind of like me. So maybe I'm a little biased, but at the same time, you know, like, I don't think there's many people that will complain about, you know, his track record. Avatar gets interesting. It gets interesting because when that movie dropped, 3D wasn't really a thing. I mean, we had 3D movies like in the past a long time ago. Like those crappy ass like red and blue 3D glasses you put on, and it was like a gimmick thing. But when Avatar 1 came out, it was like taking, like I said earlier, he takes technology to the next level. Like, he did it in T2 with CGI. Like, he brought CGI to the next level. With Avatar 1, he brought things to a new level. Nobody had ever seen 3D like that in a movie before. And it paid off. It really paid off. We made, I don't even remember how much money that movie made. I think it, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Avatar 2 passed Titanic. Avatar 1, I mean, past Titanic. That's crazy. Anyway, here we are. The king is coming back. The king of blockbusters. When I say the king of blockbusters, I'm not mincing words, man, because there's something about these movies that no matter who is at the helm of them, there's a few guys you can always count on to bring you the best. James Cameron is one of them. Now, a lot of people had issues with Avatar 1 because the storyline wasn't the most original, which that's a fair take. You know, I understand where they're coming from, and I absolutely agree with that. But I'll say this. Even though the story of Avatar 1 wasn't the best, everything else about the movie that he brought to it was completely original. and entertaining, and visually stunning and creative. And the raw imagination that this guy brought to this world, fully realize like all the details. Like, I remember like reading up on some of the science behind Avatar 1, and like James Cameron like literally thought of all the scientific reasons why the planet is the way it is, why they have to use regular guns because of the way that, you know, it, like there's things in the movie that justify pretty much all the technology in the movie, which I think is like a really interesting way of like forming a world, like a really creative and interesting like real world. So yeah, man, like Avatar 1 was a very entertaining film. You know, I enjoyed the hell out of it. The action sequences lived up to the hype, and the guy is coming back. It's a pretty big deal, man, because I think, you know, for me, the fact that this guy waited so long to release a sequel to a movie, he has to have something, right? Like, for a guy with his brain and the way that he thinks and uses technology, there has to be a reason why he waited this long. So on one hand, I'm sort of like, okay, well, he waited this long to make this movie. He must have something for us. But on the other hand, like the more like I see of this movie, the more I'm starting to get the feeling that like maybe this is a film that really should have been a self-contained movie. And now I'm hearing that this guy is going to be making like Avatar 6, Avatar 7. Like, that's getting a little bit crazy now. I mean, I think this thing should end with the next movie. Like, you know, just make Avatar 1, 2, and 3, complete trilogy, and then yeah, that's all you really need, man. Like, how much of these blue people can we really, you know, tell? Like, how deep does this go? That being said, you know, I have to see it. I have to see it because I've always been like a big James Cameron guy, you know. T2 is probably like, T2 in my opinion, I think is probably the greatest action blockbuster movie ever made. Like, what even comes close to that movie? Like, I did a whole video on this thing, but I mean, he always brings stuff to the next level. But anyway, I want to see what this movie has in store because I'm a little bit worried about the storyline because it seems like it's retreading a lot of the same stuff that was sort of touched upon in the first movie. And he's got to come with something new. Now, it looks like what we're going to see in this movie is a bit more of the different tribes and clans on Avatar, which they touched upon in the original movie, very briefly. So we're going to be looking at probably like, you know, like the Water Clan, right, for this movie. And I want to see sort of like, because my whole like thought process to this thing is that I think he might be actually trying to tell an Avatar story with each one of the different clans. So each movie, you'll have Avatar 2 be the Water Clan, Avatar 3 will be a different clan, Avatar 4, 5, 6, etc. But man, at what point does it get to be like a burnout, man? You know, even with Terminator, like Terminator was like one of the most interesting universes ever made, but then you think about it and you're like, man, he told the story so well in 2 movies. What more is there? I mean, look how many times they tried to make more Terminator films, and all of them pretty much failed, man. So I mean, it's like, you can only like squeeze so much juice out of one thing at a time, man, because eventually the audience is gonna get tired of watching the same thing. But yeah, it's curious, man. I will definitely have a review on Avatar 2. I'm planning to see if I can get a bunch of the original like talkback guys together, so we can kind of like have like an old school like roundtable discussion on it. Because I think, regardless of how the movie like turns out, I think like Avatar 2 might actually be like an interesting film. Because James Cameron always brings something to the table that I think is like unique and interesting. And you know the action is going to be off the hook. Every James Cameron movie, like this guy's like level of thinking when it comes to the action sequences and what happens and like the craziness of it. Like you can really tell in the trailer, like, there's gonna be some crazy water sequences in this thing. The guy's flipping over, like getting eaten by sharks. It's gonna be ridiculous. So in that sense, you know, I think, you know, my ticket's already bought for that because I'm gonna be going in to see that. Like I said earlier, though, the real question is, will this world and its story sustain itself? And I don't think it will, man. Anyway, moving on to yeah, Indiana Jones, man. Indiana Jones. Just take a sip of green tea. Yeah, man, the Indiana Jones trailer dropped, and I gotta say, like, it looks good. It looks interesting. And a lot of the kind of spoilerish rumors that were floating around the internet at the time, I tried to avoid them, but I kind of caught a couple by accident. It seems like they were kind of right on track. How this thing is going to involve time travel. And you know, like, I've always sort of like thought that idea was kind of an interesting one to go with, man, because it's like you have a Harrison Ford who's extreme, like the guy is so old now. So I have that sort of like trick where you bring him back and he's like a lot younger because of like how they're gonna use CGI on him. I think it's an interesting and cool way of sort of bringing this whole thing back. But I'll say this, man. Indiana Jones really kind of ended with part 3. It was the perfect ending, and we all know that that was the ending that Spielberg intended for this thing. But I'm you know, I really enjoy those movies, like, especially like a lot of people don't like Indiana Jones Part 2, but to me, Indiana Jones Part 2 is probably my favorite one of the entire like trilogy because of how crazy and dark it was, man. Like there were some sequences in Indiana Jones 2 that, like, watching that like as a kid was like, it was like some of the scariest shit. Like I honestly think that that whole sequence with like the giant, like the bug tunnel sequence, the freaking like the sequence towards the end when the guy's like ripping the heart out of the guy, like, dude, when Steven Spielberg goes into that dark part of himself, you get some crazy shit. You get some crazy shit. That being said, though, I mean, I think, you know, it's gonna be interesting to see how this turns out because I don't believe Spielberg is actually directing this one. But from what I hear, the director that's doing this movie is actually a pretty good director. Like his track record seems to be pretty good. So, yeah, man, it's gotta be better than Crystal Skull. Gotta be. Yeah, so I'm gonna check that out and hopefully it's good. And let's hope that they take it to a place where like we can finally sort of put an end to this thing. Let this be like Harrison Ford's like last great movie. The guy's getting so old, man. I mean, I like the guy, but he's getting so old for these movies. I just can't see it anymore, man. Alright, I guess we can move on to Mario now. Oh, Mario Brothers, man. Listen, man. I have a special place in my heart for Mario, man. As a kid that, you know, grew up in the 90s. Mario. Like, I remember, like, playing Super Mario Brothers 2, like, at my cousin's house during the summertime. We would just play through those games, man. Mario 1, Mario 2. Man, those were great times. And I specifically remember, like, the original movie coming out with John Leguizamo. Man, that was like, dude, a lot of people like hated on that movie back in the day, but you know what though? I'll say this about that movie. That movie was interesting because it's like they tried to do something completely different than the games. Like they were trying to sort of like, okay, because I'm looking at the new Mario trailer and it looks just like the games, you know? But with that original movie, They seemed like they were trying to take the game world and turn it into what can be sort of like a fully realized reality of what Mario would be if it was done in a realistic sci-fi kind of Blade Runner kind of way. And you know, I kind of appreciate what they tried to do with that movie. But I gotta say though, man, like, even though like this new Mario Brothers film looks pretty good for what it is, I don't know what it is about it. Maybe it's just CGI burnout. Something about it really isn't getting me excited. Because it looks pretty much just like a next gen like Mario game. Like if Mario Brothers came out on like PS6 or even PS5, I feel like this is what it would look like as a game. But I don't know, man. Some stuff in there I did like some of the visuals looking like they pop the way they should. But man, I think it's a combination of things that kind of is not really doing it for me. Maybe it's the voice. A lot of people say the voice. The voice didn't bother me as much as some people did, because I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to bring a little bit of realism to Mario's voice, if that makes any sense. Because I'm not sure what the storyline is going to be of this thing, but it looks like, I have a suspicion that it looks like it's going to incorporate Mario in the real world going into the Mushroom Kingdom. Which if they're doing that, then it kind of almost really kind of justifies a little bit what they're trying to do with the voice. Because if you have him coming in as a normal guy, he's not going to really talk the way he did in the games. So maybe they're trying to do something clever with that. I don't know. But it was slightly better in this trailer than it was in the first trailer, but he basically had no accent whatsoever. But we'll see how it turns out, man. I mean, the CGI looks like it's top quality, man. It looks good. But a lot of movies look good now. You know, a lot of movies look good. The CGI is never really an issue. But man, I hope that they bring something creative to this thing, man, because it's Mario. You know, the biggest game character ever created, man. So I'm still on the fence on it. We'll see. I'm ready for a trailer 3 to see if I'm fully into seeing it. But not bad, man. Not bad. There's one more thing I wanted to mention briefly before I get out of here. That Transformers trailer that dropped, man, nothing has changed, man. I will be honest and say this, Bumblebee and the following post Michael Bay Transformers films have actually been a slight improvement over the Michael Bay ones. Very slight improvement. But I think the problem is, when you make a Transformers movie, are you making the movie about the robots, or are you making the movie about the humans? Because there hasn't been a single Transformers movie yet that has really delved into the psychology of the Autobots versus Decepticons, their whole dynamic. And I think, you know, a lot of the good stuff about Transformers is in there. Like that's like the juice of it, man. Like how the Autobots are, like, you know, technically they're inferior to the Decepticons, but Decepticons are just like disorganized and they're always fighting each other. And like all that like interesting stuff, like the Starscream dynamic, how Starscream is trying to kill Megatron, but he's always like all that good stuff has never, like, it's always been like very lightly touched upon, but never really gone deep into in any Transformers movie. And I saw this new this Beast, basically it's Beast Wars trailer, and I'm confused because I'm looking at it and I'm like, first of all, okay, are they trying to connect this to Bumblebee? Because Beast Wars, the show, took place on a completely different planet. Like, that wasn't Earth. Then I'm seeing scenes where Optimus is standing next to the gorilla robot. And I'm like, isn't Optimus the gorilla robot in the show? Like, are they fighting each other? I have a lot of questions. I'm confused. So it seems like what they're trying to do is that they're trying to merge Beast Wars into Bumblebee, into the Michael Bay movie, which is kind of a weird thing because it's like the end of Bumblebee was like the beginning of Transformers 1, wasn't it? Like, I'm confused. Anyway, man, like it's kind of a mess. I think the way forward for Transformers movies, and here's a golden nugget for you guys. Do you remember the way that Transformers Bumblebee started, where it was a CGI intro on Cybertron? All you guys gotta do is make a Transformers movie like that. Just make the entire movie take place on like Cybertron, or the transition from Cybertron to Earth, or the beginnings of the battles on Earth, and all you gotta do, man, make this thing about Transformers, man. It's always the same old thing, man. And you know this thing is gonna be a joke. They're gonna put comedies and jokes in it. Oh my gosh, man. Like I'm pretty much done with this stuff, man. I'm done with all the new Transformers movies. It's a shame because it's such an amazing franchise. It's gonna take someone special to come back to it. Like Steven Spielberg needs to come back to Transformers, man. Like, don't produce it, direct it. Like, if Steven Spielberg directs Transformers, it's game over for everybody. For everybody. Oh man. But anyway, those are my hot takes for last week, actually. Yeah, last week. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, and I've noticed a couple of you new guys have subscribed, and I really appreciate that a lot, man. So I'm gonna try to do this a lot more often, and hopefully it gives you guys like a more in-depth, different take than what's, you know, most YouTubers out there are doing. Because, you know, I'm here to speak my mind, man, and like I just feel like a lot of the guys out there are just like saying what everyone else is saying, and yeah, we need to bring back sort of like what made the original Talkback special. So I'm doing my thing here, and hopefully eventually we'll have a collaboration again with Talkback. But yeah, Infinity's Limit here. Those are my hot takes for this week. I'm out of here. See you guys in the next one.